This is TWiT.
All right, so we are here with Mike Soucie from Google, Senior Product Marketing Manager. Sorry, Mike, I wanted to make sure that I got your last name right there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Follow your show, really exciting stuff you talk about, so I'm very happy to.
Yay, okay, well, if you've been following us, then you know all season long, Meg and I have been talking about all the different ecosystems that we live with in our house and kind of the way that all these different things work with one another. And so we really wanted to talk to you about the Nest trajectory in particular, especially because we've got Google Thread running through that. And I think some of our audience members might be wondering, what is the difference between that Google Thread? How does it keep everything interlaced in the Nest ecosystem? And I personally would like to know, why you guys chose this particular standard. So I guess, want to kick it off? Want to kick off some questions?
Yeah, sure. I think the one thing to kind of note, right, is that Google acquired Nest back in 2014. For the last 4 years, we've been running independently, and essentially Google was a sister company where we'd collaborate. Back in February of 2018, we actually merged Nest into the Google Home division. So we're actually in that process of merging, realizing that between Google products and Voice Assistant, along with Nest products, really addressing energy, safety, and security, that really we had an incredible portfolio of products that we could work for integration of our products, let alone really working with outside third-party products and ecosystems and bring them in to really deliver unparalleled experiences at the end of the day for the consumers.
Right. So you have talked a lot about how a smart home can't truly be smart unless all those things are talking to each other. So I wanted to get a little more from you on Google Thread. I read a little bit about it being related to the Qualcomm spec. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And I was just wondering if you could just explain that spec a little bit, kind of where it came from and how it relates to the Zigbee and Z-Wave specs that exist.
Yeah, so, I think it's important to understand that like Zigbee and Z-Wave have been protocols around the industry for over literally the last 10 or 15 years. And a lot of the protocols, those protocols have been run on big servers, so each one kind of takes a different shape to solve different problems. And if you kind of look inside, you'll find are based on CPU, RAM, and power. And so a lot of those protocols weren't addressed for the nuances of today's connected home, which are really much smaller chips. That's one of the constraints that I think the existing protocols and paradigms have been challenged with. We looked at the existing protocols from Zigbee, Z-Wave, Insteon, 933, and realized that the protocols out there weren't really addressing the issues that were important for us. And those are really centered around 3 or 4 different things. Number one is security. So knowing, Google and Nest have to take security as a number one priority. Security was kind of the top of the list. The second thing is the ability to easily join a network. So device provisioning, getting it onboarded is another criteria. A third one is power constraints. So how can we reduce the communication that would do that quickly, right? So, and then, lastly is really making sure again that it works with a wide variety of products. So we support the Thread, and we supports over 250 devices in the home. So 4 or 5 years ago, when we were looking at that, we looked at all the protocols and realized there wasn't anything out there. So Nest was a founding member, and then that became something that is a nonprofit organization that is an open protocol, but we use it specifically on our own products as well today. And I think there's over 200 companies that have joined the Thread group, and it's really taken off actually as a very secure protocol that is very efficient and long-lasting battery.
So Apple recently joined the Thread group. What did you make of that?
I thought that was great. It's a validation of the technology. Again, this is going on 4 years. Thread.org is an open source, Thread community. And to me, to have such another big player join Thread group, validates the technology. And at the end of the day, there's other companies that have done that. Samsung and SmartThings, and the old CEO of SmartThings really praised what we were doing with Thread and that there was a need in the industry. So to me, the announcement with Apple is a positive thing for both Thread and the industry as a whole.
So I know you were at Nest before they were bought by Google. Was there some concern when you were acquired of this fragmentation problem, like being owned by one of the big players?
From a Nest perspective,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was a concern. There's deep respect for Google and the brand, right? And if you kind of look at Google's background in search and a developer platform, and they've only been in the hardware space outside of the phone space for the last 2 years. So when you start talking about Google Home products with Google Voice and the speakers and different things like that, it's only been a couple of years. And so what Nest was able to bring to Google was really a hardware discipline. Tony Fadell and Matt Rogers really came out of building incredible hardware that is beautiful, that consumers want to put on their walls. And, merging that with Google's software platform and really working collaboratively, I think it's kind of a great marriage. And really, this is just the beginning. And I think, again, earlier, as I kind of painted the different categories in the home that both Nest products and Google products offer, and then adding software on top of that, let alone we're at the tip of the iceberg of really leaning into kind of AI, machine learning, habitual pattern recognition, natural language, all of these things to really create a really kind of unparalleled different experience for the consumer. So it's really about coming together with our strengths of hardware, software, and kind of this AI bit to really bring on new experiences that the consumer will just enjoy, where the technology hopefully fades into the background, and yet your home truly automates around the comings and goings of the family, if you will.
So what do the Nest devices need to kind of work interchangeably with other devices in terms of the spec that we were sort of talking about earlier?
Yeah, so all of Nest products essentially have 3 different communication protocols. Wi-Fi, which is the ability to talk to the cloud. There's Thread and Weave for device-to-device communication. And then we also use Bluetooth, mostly for provisioning and getting a new product onboarded. Sometimes we use NFC in certain cases, but those are our primary 3 protocols. We also have the Works with Nest ecosystem.
Right.
There's over 40,000 developers in the ecosystem that have signed up for Works with Nest, from garage startups to Fortune 100 companies, and we've done pretty incredible partnerships with these companies. Most of those integrations use a cloud-to-cloud integration. So a third party would have their own device that talks to the cloud. Their cloud talks to ours, and ours down to our devices, and vice versa. And that's a majority of the integration. Last year, we did a collaborative product build with Yale Locks, where we did the Nest Yale Lock. That was the first third-party product that we actually enabled to have the Weave technology in there. So the Yale Lock actually speaks Thread and Weave directly to our products and infrastructure, which eliminates the need to hop to the cloud, essentially. So, that's a beginning of, I think, many partnerships to come. And while we essentially serve 6 different kind of categories across Nest and Google products, the home is vast, and there's probably about 15 to 25 major categories, and we don't plan on trying to solve for every category in the home. What we've done is really kind of chosen our verticals and our disciplines, and then we're partnering with those other third-party device manufacturers at different levels, whether it's a Nest Yale Lock collaborative effort, or all the way down to a cloud-to-cloud integration, or just a third-party manufacturer that wants to join the program. It's free, and then they ask for a client review. We do a certification. Next thing you know, they're part of our ecosystem. So it's quite broad.
So I wanted to ask about that certification, actually, because I've spent the last year basically looking through every DIY security system there is out there, and I noticed a lot of them integrate with Nest in addition to the individual Nest Secure that exists. So what does a third party need to be able to work harmoniously within the Nest ecosystem?
They really need cloud to cloud, so they have to have a cloud infrastructure. And then Works with Nest, you essentially sign up for the program, you get access to individual device APIs, so the developer can download those, and we expose different controls of our products to those developers. So, many of the developers tap into our home and away assist feature. So it started way back with the Nest thermostat. When you install it, we understood when you're home or away. And there's so many meaningful actions that we can take on behalf of the consumer when we know whether you're occupying the home or whether you're away. And so many manufacturers, do integrations, whether it's to reduce energy and cost savings by turning off lights, or let's say we've done integrations actually if you forget to close your garage door. So we have an integration with Chamberlain garage door opener. If it senses that you're away from home, it'll give you an alert saying, you may want to check to see if your garage door is open or closed, and you can close it remotely. We also use deterrents. So one of the things we do is if one of our cameras, outdoor cameras, spots a person, because we have person detection essentially, a third party can tap into our APIs and be able to turn on a light. So if you're away on vacation, Nest Cam outdoor spots a person, they're walking up into your yard, we can actually do a deterrent and turn on the light just based on that. We also have just home and away assist that if you're gone for over 24 hours, we'll randomly turn on lights to simulate what we call moccupancy, right? It's just mocking that you're actually home. So pretty kind of cool, integrations and user benefits that we allow developers to do based on our ecosystem and APIs.
I love the word moccupancy. That's a great word. So I have a Nest Cam IQ outdoor Nest Cam, as we talked about before, and it does have the feature, and it recognizes when my kids come in. When I first set it up, it said unrecognized face, and then I could say yes. Yes, that person is allowed in, and no, that person isn't. So what happens to those photos? I noticed, I was almost thinking, well, it's a Google-owned company, it's probably going to start bringing up my photos because it knows all my kids, including their faces, and can tell apart my identical twins when my friends and family can't. What happens to those photos? What can you tell us about privacy of those photos? And what can you tell us about that?
Right now, they're just stored in isolation. And again, Nest, for all intents and purposes, has been run as a separate company. And we do, had a policy of not sharing any of that data. Of course, during the merger, we're becoming one company. So we're actually working through kind of all the privacy policies as it relates and being transparent back to the consumer of how your Nest photos of the past, or not just photos, but kind of security, will be transitioned into the merged company. So that's kind of coming forward. But I think we've brainstormed out of a lot of what we can do by analyzing photos, not personally, not by having people look at them, but having algorithms, again, look for patterns is really the key. When we really talk about the future of the connected home, and by the way, we tend not to like to use smart home. That tends to infer that you're controlling it with your smartphone. And I think what we're really moving towards is the thoughtful home experience, one that cares about you, your family, the people inside it as an invited guest, allowing us to automate on your behalf thoughtfully. And so we want to kind of be able to do that. But in order to do that, we need data. So it's really a social contract. It's an invitation. Consumers can choose to share data with us or not. If they do, we're hoping to provide really the convenience of the benefit of being able to do a level of automation that's really going to be unparalleled. So we don't have anything to announce yet, but you can just kind of see that the more data we get, the better. But there are security, privacy concerns. We have a policy of being very transparent about what we collect, what we do with it, and then always enable the consumer to turn it off at any given time. And so it's just, that's how we look at data, how we are kind of looking towards the future of what we can provide for the consumer.
So I bet when you tell people what you do in your regular life, they probably ask you all about the connected home, which I do prefer the connected home to the smart home. What do you tell people, like when they're just like, I want my home to be connected, but I don't know where to start? What do you usually tell people?
That's a really good question. And my question back to them is, what's your pain point? And, usually, again, there's categories. So is it about saving energy or reducing your heating bill? If that's the case, start with the thermostat. If it's entertainment, a Chromecast is a great place to start. A voice assistant is actually also a great entry point. You know, with the Google Mini, you can get in for under $50, and you have the beginning of using voice not just for search, but that can be something that can be expanded upon. There's actually a survey, or there's a study out there, a retail study, 45% of Google Home queries are to control devices in the home. So consumers essentially want to use their voice for home automation, to turn on lights, to turn it off, to set the thermostat. It's just another interface that's just as easy as either walking up to a light switch, but it's much easier when you're in bed, right, to just say turn off the lights or turn up the heat. So voice is a great place to start, but really at the end of the day, it's around solving a particular pain point that a consumer has, and you can look at safety, where Nest Secure is a great safety and security, Nest Secure, or our Nest Protect. If it's around entertainment, again, Google Chromecast. If it's about Wi-Fi and reliability is huge. And Google Wi-Fi is a great solution because it now introduces Wi-Fi mesh to really cover all the nooks and crannies of the home to be sure that you have good Wi-Fi. And that's really important when you do talk about connected devices, to be sure that they're always online and they're not dropping off, and you don't have that latency issue. So from my perspective, it's always about, if we can provide the consumer with a great entry experience around a pain point that they're having. For instance, Nest Hello is our doorbell camera. And if you pair that with a Google Mini, which is our voice assistant, when somebody rings the doorbell, it does what we call visitor announce.
Someone's at the door.
Exactly.
Your mom is at the door.
Well, and it'll tell you who, if you have that feature turned on, right? And so if you have Chromecast, you can then say, Chromecast, show me the door. And it'll actually, if you're watching TV, you'll be able to see who's at the door. So you can begin to see how all these products are going to start working together at such a degree. I always kind of look at this as an evolutionary. The last 3 or 4 years about individual product discovery, using your smartphone to control things. Now we're moving into cross-product integration, where they're going to work better together, and then starting to use voice as another interface, and then the seamless experience around mostly solutions. Not the entire whole home, but whether you're talking about doorman, security, safety, entertainment, there's kind of like 2 or 3 or 4 products working in that solution category. Really, it provides a great experience to build on.
So I actually have, I mean, I pretty much have the whole Nest ecosystem, I should just say it, embedded throughout my house. Both mix of personal and professional reasons, but so I've been able to experience kind of this whole like ecosystem, the way it's supposed to work. And when people come over, they're really into it, but the one thing they ask me is, how much does this all cost? And I think one of the big barriers for some people out there, in particular with the connected home, is that sort of that annual monthly upkeep. Is there any, any talks around the Nest buildings about possibly, maybe like a free tier that offers one person who is identifiable through the security cameras or something of the sort, to sort of to help newcomers feel like that's something that is available to them?
I think there's a couple things to note. It's funny that we're talking about pricing, because I'm at the CEDIA trade show, which is in San Diego right now. And this is a custom installer trade show. This has been an industry for the last 30 years where they do essentially $10,000 to $100,000 installs of home entertainment and security and connected home installations. And in some respects, this has come so affordable, but I do understand for us to really hit mainstream, that price is a big issue. And we're really heading towards economies of scale here. So to your point, I think as technology grows, you get broader adoption. Pricing is constantly being analyzed and essentially looked at, both in creating less expensive products as well as looking at services that could be essentially bundled at a less expensive price. So my overall thought is that you're going to, over the next, tough to predict, but over the next couple of years, certainly you're going to start to see prices come down as more adoption occurs. So just like any industry, economies of scale will start to apply into this. But there are true hard costs, if you think about it, for companies like Google, of having to stream video across a bandwidth and store it. And it's surprisingly more expensive than people think. But I do understand that for us to reach mainstream adoption, prices do need to come down.
And I don't like, I love things that are free, don't get me wrong, but it is slightly comforting that I pay for the subscription that has the facial recognition. It's a small comfort because, as tech people, we always question, like, why is the service free? What are they doing? That sort of thing. So I appreciated your answer about the companies being separate, but it is also something that we should all keep in mind, like you said, that there's a cost to these things.
Right.
Is there any, so again, because I've got all these things in my house, I do have the nicely designed motion sensors, for instance, the entry sensors, which double as motion sensors as well, very nicely designed. But I'm kind of, part of the thing that is kind of a bummer is if I take out the Nest Secure for some reason, I have to install like the Nest, what's it called, the Nest Connect, which has the spec in it. Is there maybe a future where we don't have to rely on these little median points that have to connect us all? Maybe a future where just the chip isn't everything?
No, it's a really good point. One of the philosophies that Nest has had from day one is that you shouldn't have to buy a hub, another piece of hardware that just sits there and does interoperability between the different protocols and different devices that you've had. So even when we built the Nest Learning Thermostat from day one, we actually overbuilt it. It has 7 different sensors in it. It's got Wi-Fi. It's got an 802.15.4 chip in it that runs Thread and Weave. It's got the Bluetooth for onboard. I mean, it's actually overbuilt in many different ways. But to your point, when it does come to Thread and Weave devices, currently the lock needs to have some sort of medium device in order to interop and convert that communication signal essentially to the cloud that can be controlled remotely. So I think you're going to find over time, we don't have anything to announce today, that all of these little kinks, if you will be worked out to where it should be seamless. We still hold true to the philosophy that you shouldn't have to have another piece of hardware just to act as that hub. And we believe that in the long term, we'll be able to solve for that.